How to live.
So we did want to get into it by asking you a bit of a funny question.
Yeah.
We were wondering, do you remember the first time we met you?
Wow.
We're really putting you on the spot.
We won't take offense if you don't remember it, because don't worry,
Because we do.
I've got a really great answer, which is I just feel that you've been in my life for the last 8 years while I've been running the festival.
Oh, that is a very good answer.
No, it's the truth, because I think when I started the festival, I was really keen to drive an agenda around what youth is doing and making sure that we have the currency and we're going to survive, we're going to be sustainable, because the festival relies on the underground scene and what's emerging. And of course, if you think about it, even 8 years ago, the concept of social media was probably just really
beginning,
starting, you know. So I loved scouting and being inspired by, you know, people that were in my vision, and you guys were them. You know, you were part of that, you know, because I just loved what you were doing, and I just loved your style, and of course, you know.
Oh, that's so funny.
You certainly weren't quiet in the corner.
We were, but we laughed at, like, we were really like just hacking our way at that point. Like, you know, we were telling stories the other day about like rocking up to Paris Fashion Week, not even being invited, and just kind of trying to like weasel our way in. And you were kind of there at the beginning of that, when we would just like rock up to to Melbourne Fashion Festival in these like crazy outfits.
Be photographed by everyone.
Yeah, exactly.
That was
Thinking
the goal.
we were somebody when really we were nobody.
Yeah.
I think like you guys sat us front row one time and we were like, oh my god, we made it.
Totally. And I think the first time, because I was trying to think of it this morning, we were actually walking past you. It was in the Docklands, and it was probably our first VAMFF.
Yeah.
And then it wasn't even VAMFF, was it?
It was LMFF, Melbourne Fashion Festival.
And we were just walking past you, and you obviously didn't know who we were, and we knew who you were. And you just said like, oh, great outfits or something like that. And I remember we just like giggled to ourselves like, oh my god, did that actually happen? And so I feel like it's like a cool kind of like full circle that now you are coming into our environment.
Yeah.
Totally.
How exciting. And you're innovating again with podcasts, you know.
Oh, we are. We try to keep on top of the game. But I remember like every time we would see, we'd be like, oh, there's Graeme. Have to talk to Graeme. And then we were also laughing that like the way we got you on this podcast was, hey Graeme, want to be on our podcast? You're like, yeah, of course, before we told you anything about it.
And didn't we just chat on Instagram as well?
Yeah.
No, not at all. So like, I feel like all that hustling we did with you in the early days has really paid off.
Yeah, we put in the long yards.
Oh, you so do. Yeah.
So we kind of thought we would want to kick it off by like getting a little bit of like a juicy insight into what it's like to like actually be a part of a fashion festival, and like totally behind the scenes experience that you get to see as part of your job. So we thought it would be funny if you told us maybe like, are there any like weird or crazy requests you've ever gotten from like a model or a designer, like a real like drama or like something that like you'd read about but like you don't really believe would ever be true?
Wow.
And you don't have to name names.
Yeah, look, there's many. Fortunately with the festival, and this is not going to be a fun answer for you, but fortunately because we're so focused on democratising the fashion industry and keeping it real, like allowing consumers to really feel that it's something that they can belong to, they can go to, we generally, I think we must brief our celebrities and all our models and all of our VIPs quite well, because they understand that we're not going to be one of those events. We're one of those events where we want everyone to feel that they can belong, still be inspired, and still be super professional, super cool, but something that's a little bit more chilled and something that's a little bit more real, if that makes sense. So if I think about some of the celebrities, we do set up green rooms, you know, where they can, you know, chill out, have hair and makeup done. And
are there any like bowls of blue M&Ms only?
Yeah, you know, I don't even recall anything that dramatic. This is so not fun. I'm so willing to give you something juicy. I think, you know, maybe we just have a few things right. I mean, we don't just serve them tap water, we serve them beautiful Italian San Pellegrino water. So maybe they're like, wow, yeah, that's cool. That's exactly what I'm expecting. Look, I think some of the, if I can give you some juicy insights, I think it's really backstage. You know, it is such a massive, massive undertaking. At last count for this festival, we will have 8,000 items of clothing in our collection storage area. 8,000 items of clothing. and then you add probably 3,000 to 4,000 accessories on top of that.
Oh my gosh.
And all of that is in our sort of property at the moment that we're managing. When you go into that venue and you see that sheer amount of clothing, it's quite overpowering for a number of reasons. One, wow, we're going to put all that on a runway over the course of the festival. How are we going to do that? Wow. The other one is that confrontation of, especially with the sustainability lens, that confrontation of, wow, we really do chew up a lot of clothing and a lot of styles and a lot of brands, and they're on a large scale, and therefore we really love what we do, the part that we play, which is bringing those clothes and all those brands, that overwhelming number, the scale of those clothes and brands and accessories. We bring them to the consumers and we encourage them to buy that whole see now, buy now. So I think I then feel super proud because I think, wow, look what we're doing. There's so many clothes and accessories here. There's so many small to medium-sized brands trying to give it a go, trying to contribute to the economy, and we are actually allowing consumers to get excited about all of these items and buy them. And buy them at full price, not buy them at sale price. Learn about the brands, not just buy compulsive buying, they're actually learning about the brands, learning about the DNA of the brand, learning what are the morals, what are the ethics behind the brands. So that's when I get super proud. So there's a little bit of a, secret Graeme moment that I really love. And I guess, the second one which I'll touch on is I often, this will sound a little bit creepy, but I love lurking in the shadows sometimes of the festival, just having some time out to reflect on what we've achieved. And I love just looking at consumers all dressed up. It's so amazing.
Oh, people get so dressed up about it. It's incredible.
Well, yeah, and I think that's something that's so fun about the festival, and it's funny that you touched on you want it to be a festival for everyone and super chilled, because that's part of why we love it so much. As you would know, we go to a lot of fashion weeks and people look at it and they're like, oh, so fun, so glamorous. And literally Melbourne is our favourite festival for that exact reason. We go to a New York Fashion Week and sometimes it's it's all just a bit pretentious and no one really feels like they belong. And I love that you're pushing that because it's completely your point of difference.
Yeah, 100%. And we know that we're Australia's largest fashion event, and we use that in our marketing. It's an important thing. It's an important distinction for consumers to know that that's what they're buying into. But actually, if you look around the world, we're probably the biggest consumer fashion sort of festival in its own right.
Yeah.
I travel quite a bit to international fashion weeks like yourselves, and they don't do much for consumers. London Fashion Week has London Fashion Weekend, which they now call London Fashion Weekend Festival.
Oh,
pretty
funny.
Interesting. New York have a smaller schedule, but really we're doing something pretty unique in terms of driving that professional production agenda where consumers are seeing the Chanel show, they're seeing the incredible Burberry show or whatever it might be on social media, and they might be here in Melbourne or in Sydney or in Adelaide and thinking of coming to the festival. If we're not as good as, if not better than what they're seeing on their social media feed, why would they buy a ticket to our event? So I think we're doing a good job, and that's been a big part of our process, is driving a really great production agenda so that the value for a consumer ticket is really there. Not only groups of girlfriends, mothers and daughters, couples, whatever it might be, coming to the festival, they're really getting this elongated experience. And I think that's something we do that no one else is really doing at the same scale and at the same level of production values.
Totally, and I think that, when you first came on board with the festival, I remember it was at the Docklands, there was kind of one main venue, there were a couple of brand activations, but you totally transformed this festival into being this massive event with activations everywhere. And I think we'd love to hear more about you and how you kind of envisage this. We know you studied fashion, or you studied Bachelor of Arts, and did some research at RMIT, and then you went on to do your own fashion label. Did you see yourself where you are now at that point?
No, actually. So the interesting story is I thought I'd be a designer. I loved it. I had my own fashion label didn't last
What was
too
it
long.
called?
What? And you
Oh
won
my
an
god,
award.
I'm so embarrassed to. Alright, I'll tell you. It's really funny.
I'm really excited.
It's called Gyro.
Gyro, like G.
Y-R-O.
Gyro.
Anyway, I can't even begin to.
Where did that come
I have
from?
no idea.
People ask us where tubes comes from all the
So
time.
I think, showing my age, but, when I was in that headspace and things that were really influencing, I guess, popular culture, then apart from obviously London, Brit music and all that sort of thing, you got to remember that I was growing up in the Face magazine and Arena and ID and, those magazines, we were sitting here in Australia, I would do whatever it would take to get the first issue of Arena, and you'd open it up and I'd just sort of, devour it so quickly.
I don't actually know what Arena magazine is. Do you know?
Yes,
I
see,
feel like
you
it's like the Vogue before
Yeah, I
the Vogue.
hope maybe there's someone on this podcast. Please write to the girls that do
Send
know
a
what I'm
pic of
talking
Arena.
about. But look, yeah, showing my age a bit. But I was so inspired by those things that it's always given me a different view on the world of fashion in Australia. And I actually left Australia. I ran from Australia when I won the scholarship, which was fantastic, the Walmart Prize.
I can't believe you won the Walmart prize and we didn't know about it.
Yeah,
It's a-
like you must have been really good.
Oh, I don't know.
Gyro sounds amazing.
Gyro is hysterical. Look, it's a very different. The Walmart Prize is very different to the International Walmart Prize. So I'm not trying to assume that it's the same prize, but it was the prize they ran then. It was called the National Design Award or something of that ilk, and I won the menswear category. And as a result, I had a scholarship overseas, and I thought, right, I am going to become a designer, and I no longer wanted to live in Australia. I thought it was really crass and no one had any style, and I just ran to London and just loved it. And it was actually Sir Paul Smith who tapped me on the shoulder. I did everything. I was working in the store. I was desperately trying to become a designer at Paul Smith in London, in Floral Street. I kept on, running up the stairs and, can I be a designer? Can I be a designer? Constantly.
Actually, with like the Paul
Yeah,
Smith.
I did. That was it. I was on a mission to try and design for Paul Smith. That didn't work out so well. But Paul did say, "You crazy Aussie, I think you'd be really good in PR, and there's a job opening up as a junior PR officer." And so I was probably 21, 22 then, and so I got pretty excited by that. I thought, well, what's this PR thing? Oh God, yeah, sure. I'm just going to talk people. I talk all the time, and I'm going to meet all these amazing people. So I started as junior press officer at Paul Smith, and it was amazing. I mean, look, I got to meet some incredible people. I, distinctly remember helping Isabella Blow. I remember specifically Elton John coming in and wanting hundreds and hundreds of tartan suits, and I was the guy. I was this junior press officer that they would always go, off you go, go into the store, blah blah blah's coming to borrow some things, and and I have to do the manual checking out, girls. Can you imagine? Oh my god, I was handwriting one of those duplicate print books and
Oh my
saying,
gosh. I actually
one,
can't imagine.
Yeah, one tartan jacket.
There you go. There are your crazy celebrity stories. They just happened at Paul Smith.
They did, and another one who I remember so well is Edward Enninful, who's now, of course, the editor in chief of British Vogue. I mean, I remember Edward was again I think quite junior at ID magazine from memory, and he would just always just do random shoots. And it's a bit like you guys. I just recognised straight away that it'd be okay to lend him things. You can imagine a big brand like Paul Smith even back in the day would be probably quite protective of the sort of editorial they were going to get. But I remember always trusting Edward and a couple of others because they just did great things. So yeah, I was sort of in London in the heyday. Katie Graham just was about to start Dazed and Confused around that time. Jefferson Hack. So it was a brilliant time to be in London.
Mm-hmm.
And so that really, I guess, had set me up from that transition from being a designer to becoming more of a marketer of fashion and understanding the fashion industry's capacity and capability to influence consumers and empower consumers, and here we are today.
Well, I think that's really cool that you had both that design experience and PR experience, and a lot of people that we speak to that have such great success have experience in different areas like that, which I think is really cool.
And I also think it's interesting, you know, you've just told this story of how you kind of got your foot in the door in the fashion industry, and I think particularly for millennials, like we kind of just like look at our lives and we're like, we want to be where we're going to be right now. I know like definitely Steffi and I felt like that, like when we were like, oh, okay, like we've had a bit of experience in the fashion industry, but now we just want to be like, you know, head deep in it. And like, from what you've seen, do you have any advice for people who are looking to kind of get their foot in the door in the fashion industry? You know, everyone says, oh, you need experience in order for us to hire you, but it's like, well, how the hell do you get that first time experience?
You don't need an experience, you need a plan. That would be how I'd address it. Maybe even what I've just described, maybe you recognise it. I've had that millennial actually attitude, I think, because I was just like, right, I'm going to do this, I'm going to get out of Australia, I'm going to go to this, and I live in London, I'm going to get a job, and I was quite fierce and determined. But I can remember jotting down plans. I can remember setting goals. I can remember I was poor, I was young, I loved being in London, and I can remember it being winter, and I can remember sharing a bedsit with 4 other guys. I can't remember what we were paying. Bedsits or a bedsit. They were like tiny they weren't even 1 bedrooms. They were like a studio apartment, and we're sitting in the girls' office here. It would probably be 1/6 the size of this office.
Okay.
And we had 4 people living in it.
God.
And everyone did, we hardly ever saw each other because everyone was working late nights. So that's the sort of thing I was determined to do to get to where I wanted to go. And I remember distinctly jotting down little ideas. It's like, number 1, going to get out of this bloody bedsit. And I'm going to earn enough money so I can hopefully at least have a flat share where I can have my own bedroom. So I think have a plan. And, look, I'm fortunate enough and I'm inspired by lots of millennials because I work with lots of millennials. And I'm really fascinated by this sort of approach of, don't hold back and, encouraging that concept of dreaming and getting there really quickly. I think it's write a plan and, just go for it and trust your instinct and go for it.
And knock on doors, I think, the way you did, and not taking no for an answer, even though you didn't get to where you thought you wanted to go, it's led you here. So that's
totally.
really cool.
Yeah.
And I know you guys have a lot of volunteers that come through the festival.
We so do.
I don't know if you know this, but I was once one of those volunteers.
Well done.
Yeah.
Woohoo.
I know. I was a back of house.
Checking the files, make sure you were on time, hey?
Oh, probably wasn't.
Was it like what year would it have been?
I think maybe it was just before you started.
Yeah, I started in 2011. So.
Yeah, because and we started How to Live in 2012 or something, and so I think it was a couple years before
I
that.
think it was maybe like 2009.
Yeah, I reckon that's right. And I was a back of house dresser.
Yeah.
And it was crazy, and I just remember models throwing off their clothes and you're throwing them on, and it's just hectic. And actually, everyone ended up getting gastro or something.
Oh.
It was gastro outbreak.
Because it's spending in such close quarters with these people for a week, I guess.
Yeah, but so lucky that was before your time.
Yes,
I'm sure that wouldn't happen under you.
Yeah, that would be really shitty if it did.
And actually,
Dad joke, it was awful.
another couple of girls in our office also volunteered, so I feel like it's very common for people.
And I volunteered at Fashion Weeks as well, in amongst my early days of career. In fact, when I decided to come back to Australia, after sort of a decade or so of working and living overseas, the first thing I did was volunteer for Fashion Week in Sydney. I was obviously a bit older there, and I had all this experience, but I still did it because I wanted a game. I had a plan. I'm going to immerse myself back into the Australian fashion industry. How better to do it? Become a volunteer, do this, do that. And I can remember I was a driver. I was driving around in Mercedes-Benz, and I'd have all sorts of guests. And I can remember I had Tyler Brûlé, who obviously then was the founder of Wallpaper magazine. Well, I think he just started Wallpaper magazine well before Monocle. And I was in awe of him, as a publisher, as this super stylish magazine, Wallpaper magazine. That was quite revolutionary in terms of what I was trying to achieve.
Yeah.
A bit like your podcast.
A little bit. Yeah, totally. So I think a lot of people are making that comparison right now. You went on to run that Fashion Week, didn't you?
Yeah, I was became certainly one of the senior executives. So obviously one of our speakers at the Fashion Summit at the festival next week is my old boss Simon Locke, who was the founder of Fashion Week in Sydney. And this is a really interesting story. So I, after volunteering and working for his youth agency, I was young back then, his youth PR marketing agency called Spin Communications, which really was one of Australia's first agencies, advertising, PR and marketing and digital agencies focused on youth marketing. It was really fascinating. And from there moved into working more closely with the Fashion Week team. And yeah, so like 15 years later, the Fashion Week was sold to IMG, and I worked for IMG for a number of years, I think 5 or 6 years. And then of course the festival headhunted me and said, hey, we need you to run the festival, so I did.
How cool is that you literally went from being a volunteer to running the festival?
There you go.
Maybe the next Graeme Lewsey is currently a volunteer.
Well, I think I know someone, I'm not going to mention his name, and if he's listening to this, he's going to know exactly who he is. He's like one of the festival's #1 fans, and he also was a volunteer. And he has on a number of occasions on social media declared that he wants my job, and I'm so excited that he does, and I hope he does get it.
Is it realistic, or is it just like
It's totally realistic. I think again, have a plan. I mean, I'm not superhuman. I'm just someone that loves what I do, love having great people around me. I get inspired by things that influence decisions. We talked about earlier, how we all met. I was inspired by you guys. I just knew there was something about you guys that was going to be great, and here we are. I truly mean that. All of those things is what it takes.
Mm-hmm. And you talked about great people around you, and that's something when we were kind of chatting about the festival, something that we really feel is that you do seem to surround yourself with amazing people that are fantastic at kind of seeing the vision and driving it forward. And particularly we love that you surround yourself with women.
Yes, well, my office is pretty dynamic at the moment, and I think there's out of 25 staff, 23 of them are women at the moment, and that's not by choice. That is just because they're the best people for the job, and it's been an amazing learning experience. And I'm a gay man and have been pretty much all my life, so my relationship with women I think has always been amazing, and I love women for a number of reasons, and have lots of great friends. But the dynamic of having an office that's mostly female has been so incredible. I've learned a lot. It's changed the dynamic on the output of the festival, and I think if I sort of slight segues also as a rower, I've done a lot of rowing in my life.
Really?
It's my side huddle. And if anyone's listening to this and has ever done any rowing at school, they'd realise, and hopefully they're with me here, the best rowing experience I've ever had is when in an 8, and it's a mixed 8, so women and men rowing together. That is an awesome experience.
Is that not that common? Is it usually just guys or just girls?
I'd say, look, it's definitely in the racing format, but it's not as common. There's fewer races for mixed 8s, but it's just that dynamic that you experience when the gender is a bit more balanced there. And I think that's something that, combining that experience with the current experience, has just been amazing, and I'm really proud of it.
That's really
and I love learning. As an older man, and I'm learning these experiences, and there's no doubt that the gap or generational gap and this concept of non-gender binary classifications and this concept of fluidity. I mean, I'm feeling it and I'm seeing it and I understand it, and I can really see where this is going.
And that's really cool because speaking to people from that are older than millennials often just totally don't get it, and will bring it up with us and just be like, what is this? What's happening? Why are people,
Yeah, it happened to us last week.
Yeah.
We were judging something, and there was a pitch put forward about something in this realm, and the other judge, who was quite a bit older than us, said, I don't identify this as a problem. And we were like, it's generational, we promise it's a problem.
Well, we'll have non-gender bathrooms at the festival this year. We definitely have non-gender bathrooms in the festival office, and a lot of that is led by I guess from my perspective, listening to the team and listening to generations below. But I'd hope, I've always been like that. I love listening, I love learning, and I went to the Business of Fashion Voices Conference last year, which was amazing, and they had some youth panels, and there was a lot of discussion around gender. And just listening to that and understanding that sort of some of the generations coming up behind the millennials, it's not an issue, and it's also if it's not done, they just don't understand why. They just don't understand why there would be a binary conversation around gender, and I just love that. What that can do to our fashion industry is remarkable, because it's only going to improve it. It's going to allow designers to just expand their offering and their portfolio and their branding. It's pretty exciting.
Totally. Well, that was actually what Jess was talking about before. We were judging a panel of we were judging Year 9 students who were going through this entrepreneurship week, and they each had to pitch in groups an idea, and one group got up there and pitched the idea of non-gender based clothing, where everything is just like male and female, and we were like, this is so cool that this is what's on the mind of Year 9 students.
Yeah, and they kind of had they could choose from anything, people were dealing with homelessness, or
they didn't even have to be social enterprises, they could be anything.
Exactly, and this is what they identified as the number one problem that they wanted to address, which is just so incredible as 15 or 14-year-old kids.
Yeah, and it's a real thing. I've been commenting on this in the last week or so about the rise of menswear, and people have been asking, what do you think why is that? And I'm like, well, because finally Melbourne men are probably getting better dressed. That's number one. But there's another chapter to this, and it's got to do with this gender fluidity, and it's got to do with the fact that menswear is it just a construct of fashion, and we listen to a lot of the designers coming up through the National Designer Award, a lot of the menswear designers. There was definitely a great influx of menswear designers in that award process, and they've all talked about their customer it's not more men, it's men and women, and in fact some of them are saying, well, probably they're selling to more women at the moment.
That's
so
cool.
That's really
changing.
interesting.
I like that.
So I think it's the future. It absolutely is the future.
For sure, yeah. I think at the moment there's this really big push for equality with women, and I think that once we do get there, I think it'll be really interesting. I think you made a comment to me the other day that you just want to see it, you don't even want to have a conversation about hiring more women. It's just, you're not hiring them because they're women, they're just hiring them.
That's right. It's got to really feel genuine and natural, and it just has to be the permission and the space to let this all happen naturally and without it being tokenistic. And we're about to obviously open up another really interesting debate by bringing the amazing Ashley Graeme to the festival next week, which we're super excited about.
So
we were
yeah.
actually talking about getting her on the podcast when we saw her coming, and we were like, just don't think it's going to happen.
Yeah, her schedule might
Maybe
be
next
a bit
time.
crazy. But you can see we're really wanting to challenge further this concept of body shape and sizes. I mean, I'm no different. I'll absolutely honestly say I have the same concerns about bodies. I've always felt uncomfortable, always wanted to look like someone else. You've always, go to Mardi Gras and see all those hot guys with those super bodies. It's a common thing, and I think until we see beauty in different shapes and sizes, and until we really encourage that thinking and not overthink it, not make it tokenistic, just make it a natural representation of our community. Until we do that, we're not really doing the right thing by
Absolutely, and it's so interesting as well, because for us, as we run our label, it's really important for us in everything that we do that we're kind of representing this inclusivity aspect of it doesn't matter what you look like, it doesn't matter who you are, and even when we're shooting our campaigns, we want every girl to be able to be in our campaign, and we can't find the right person, because either they when you look at a modeling agency's books, it's they're all one way or they're all the other way, and we want it to represent everybody, and there just doesn't seem it's not even accessible right now to a brand like us that's shopping for it, and I think that's a huge problem.
It is a huge problem. There was a little glimmer of hope in our model casting process that we just had a couple of weeks ago for the festival, and I oversee and I'm part of, and we have great teams. Our casting agent Jen does the most amazing job, and hopefully you girls agree with me. You know, our model casting has really changed over the years, and it's much more a better representation of our community. But anyway, at the model casting, it's the same scenario you were just talking about, Jess. And this year, we started to see, we saw the diversity. There was some curvy models. There was really great. I call it geographical diversity, as in where people come from Melbourne. Obviously, multicultural, racial diversity, but also age diversity. You know, body shape. So we definitely had all that if you looked at it on a macro level at the model casting. But what was different is that so many of these models could walk, and that is the difference. Whereas before, if you really tried to diversify your model pool, you would get these other models that would probably represent a more minority area of the model casting, and they couldn't really walk because they weren't trained.
Yes.
They were probably, again, coming in on a tokenistic level. It's changing, and I'm so excited by this. And I use the term they could walk, and obviously for those listening to the podcast, hopefully they appreciate what I'm talking about is walking on a runway and being able to, you know, glide down that runway and represent the clothing and accessories as best as they can. That's definitely what I meant by that. But a good walk, that confidence by a model is really important. And then if you think about the festival, we've got consumers, they're all looking at this fashion-tainment, which I like to call it, and they're buying a ticket, they're having a night out, and they want to see their models glide down that runway and look super professional, and you know, they're performers, they're real talent. But what we're now going to see is a lot more of this diversity. The reputable model agencies around the country are training these models, and they're training them to walk well. So now we're going to see a bigger pool of models that are much more representative of our community, and they can all walk, they can all glide down that runway, and I'm just so super excited at that change.
That's really cool because, yeah, like Jess said, we've gone through that and we've used real people in our campaigns, and you know, being a model isn't just about getting in a photo. They really do have to understand how to make the clothing look good, and that can be done by anyone, but they have to know how to do that, and it is a skill. So it's interesting that it's now, like, you know, it's one thing to want to see that change, but you really need to, I guess it takes time because you need the right people to be coming into it and training them, and that's awesome.
You need others to have the commitment.
Yeah.
You know, the agents representing models, the magazines, other fashion events. You know, everyone needs to toe the line to ensure that we have a better representation of the community.
Well, I think that's really cool as well. Like, you know, that Melbourne is really at the forefront of this, because we go to a lot of fashion weeks internationally, and it still is like very behind, and there's still, you know, I think New York, we see a lot more diversity there now, but there are other fashion weeks that we go to that we're like, oh, there's, you know, a token curvy girl, and that's not what we should be seeing at all. And I think that the festival in Melbourne is so forward in so many ways. Like, you know, you guys have had for years ago now, right?
Yeah, we did, I think it would be
2017?
Yeah.
Oh,
probably.
so
longer. I think a bit longer,
Okay.
So, super proud of that.
Yeah,
so
that's amazing. We actually had a funny experience when we were in London for Fashion Week, and we don't wear animal products.
Yeah.
And we were walking to a show, and we could kind of like hear a crowd outside, and
Bit of a ruckus.
people were like walking past, like, you know, really like disgruntled, like, oh, so annoying, can't believe they're doing that. And we were like, what's going on? And we got there, and there was actually a huge protest outside, like the main Fashion Week venue, and they were protesting the fact that there were, you know, furs and leathers and things.
And we were like,
do we in the show?
And we were like, do we cross this picket line, or do we join this picket line?
Yeah, and
so
I
obviously
think we did join it. I think by that point as well, we had already been in New York for Fashion Week, and we were just really like inspired and excited by like this push for change that we, I don't know, felt like was maybe missing from our previous experiences at these festivals. And I think, have they banned fur now?
I think they might have banned for
I don't know.
London.
That
was in London.
last season, wasn't it?
Yeah,
there.
yeah.
I think it was after that. We were part of that change,
Yeah.
which felt awesome.
It's so
Yeah.
good. I mean, look, as an event organizer, we try to always protect the safety of the consumers. So I think protests are really great, and it's this debate and this conversation and this concept of educating and learning. But there's another interesting thing about all of this is you've also got to protect the patrons, and you've got to protect designers, and it's a really interesting conversation when it's happening live at an event like our festival. And we've had protests of all sorts of things previously, and
Well, we
while
wouldn't
they're-
dare protest.
well,
No.
hopefully, given that we're not using fur, and we encourage absolutely everyone to not use fur across the whole. 130 odd events that we're producing this year, so it's no mean feat. But the one thing that is really good to know, I mean, it sounds like we're amazing, we're doing everything right, and we're not. I'm a real believer that you can't get everything perfect, and it's always about learning. You can always learn something else. And I think the festival, I know, comes from a really great place. We have really good morals and values. We're a great team, and I know you girls have seen us operate, but we don't get everything right. And my nod to millennials, my nod to everyone is just always think about a learning experience being at the key to everything. And when you're in leadership positions and when you're in management positions, you have to make critical decisions, and sometimes not everything goes to plan. And it's really good when you keep an eye on that fact that just learn by your mistakes, learn from the good things, learn from what other people are doing, learn from your parents, learn from your friends. I think that's another key thing that I'd like to share is, we will continue to do all of these things and more. There's many more things that we will do in the future, and I'm already aware of some of the changes I'd love to make to the festival in the next few years, but we can't do everything.
Yeah. And in that kind of theme of learning, a big part of our podcast is we're inviting these mentors, I guess, through our network to really learn from them. And something we'd love to pick your brain about today is really about growing a brand now in 2019.
I know you obviously have such incredible insights working not just with one brand, but you work with so many brands in so many different ways.
Yeah, exactly. And there are things in our, we've kind of been building up our shoe label to this certain point, but there are even things, big discussion around online versus wholesale. We were online only up until the end of last year, and then we recently went into David Jones and a couple of other independents, and that was a big discussion we had around the office, do we, don't we, and there many have come and gone, and you've seen it all. So we'd really love to hear your thoughts on that. If you were to start a brand now, what would that look like?
Yeah, I think about this often, and again, I listen to lots of people that participate and get involved in the festival so that I can answer this effectively. But you know what I'm going to say? It's actually the good old textbook, old-fashioned view and concept of having a unique selling point of view. That's what it's all about. And because online versus retail, your Instagram account, all these things, of course. I could go there and talk about how important all of these things are, knowing your customer, having a plan, and relationship with your suppliers, having a really good sustainability practice in place, because that ain't going to go away. That's key now, right? That's absolutely part of this. But the real basic 101 is unique selling point, or USP, as we talk about it. And anyone that's studying marketing, these days, it'd be sitting in a book with cobwebs. It's such an old-fashioned view of, whatever you're going to do, make sure you have a unique selling point. But that's what it comes down to. And what I mean by that is, analysing your competitors and understanding the environment in which you're going to sell your products. But it's more than that. It's, what do you really want to stand for? What is going to be different about your brand to other brands? And you girls have done that. You've made a real claim about your vegan operation and stance with what you're doing. You've made a real effort to elongate the consumer experience. So the consumers and your fans are getting a really elongated experience with you girls. Yeah, so they're listening to this podcast, they're watching you on social media, and you know, you girls have been real pioneers of that. And I'm embarrassing you both, but you have been. And I love, you know, how you've really adapted and grown in this space as it's been around you. Now you have products and brands that people can buy, and the products and brands share the values that you have. So you have a unique selling point. There's no doubt about it. Your USP is really strong. So that is what it takes. And you can't just be a designer and produce lots of beautiful dresses. You need to be a designer that produces lots of beautiful dresses that has some storytelling and has some real brand attribute that can be shared and people can believe in. Because I think, you know, correct me if I'm wrong, but millennials are really seeking integrity, and they'll call it out.
Totally.
100%.
Yeah, and you just mentioned storytelling there, and that's the thing. I think that's so important in a brand, and that's something that we've been working with a consultant on, is really, you know, storytelling in everything that we do. And it's really cool that right now in 2019, what's really important to the consumers is that integrity, and that's a really big part of the storytelling. Like with us, it's the vegan element, it's the inclusivity, and
and for a long time we were including these things and we were doing these things behind the scenes, but it didn't take until an outside person kind of came in, and that outside person is Kath Wills, because she's fantastic. And she was she was like, you're doing all these things, but you're not communicating them with people. And I think that's a big part of like what we've seen throughout our journey in the fashion industry, or even in like the public-ish eye, is that first when we started it was scary to have a point of view because you didn't want to offside anyone, and it was important to just kind of stay neutral. And now more and more we're being pushed in this direction of, you have so many opinions, you need to voice them. And I think that that's the coolest opportunity for all of us in these, you know, privileged positions where people are listening, that we are finally allowed to say, like, no, this is what we stand for.
It's everything. I mean, social media, we were talking about it in the office recently, has going through another interesting chapter because people are now not loyal to their channels. I think you guys are realising this, and that's why you're doing podcasts. So people are now really scattergunning, if that's a word. They've got this scattergun approach to their social handles, and it's not just a case of checking every single social media. It's people just want a bit of this, and then they feel like a bit of this. It's a bit of a menu of social media platforms. I'm going to be very LinkedIn this week. And then next week it's like, I'm really into my Instagram this week, so I think that's really interesting.
Yeah.
But the concept of what social media is doing, it's allowing people to have a voice. Of course, we've all known that. But it's interesting when you've got someone that might only have 200 followers on Instagram, can put something out there, and it can have a real big impact. Sometimes, I mean, haters will be haters, so, you know, there's trolls out there and all those sorts of things. But then sometimes people put really valid points out there, and they can really escalate. So it's a really interesting time that we live in, where voices, small voices, can be heard. And I hope mostly for positive reasons, but sometimes it's not for the right reasons. But that's okay. That's the game we have to juggle with social media.
I just had a flashback to last festival, I think it was, when we did a talk at VAMFF for kind of on social media, and you did put your hand up and you asked a question, you know, talking about your personal Instagram, you know, do people...
Micro-influencer.
Exactly. No, do people want to hear from me, or should it, you know, should someone on the team be managing it? How does that go? How did you find that? How's your Instagram going?
No, thank you. Yeah, it was really interesting because I've spent my entire career watching and being part of the planning and action of social media strategies, and but I never did it myself because I didn't see any value of me doing one. I put all my energy into the brands I was representing or the people I was managing, and never bothered with myself. I had a LinkedIn account, had it forever, but you know, whatever. Instagram, I never really had one, or at least I did, and I was just looking at everyone else. I never did anything, and it was the team, and I think the PR team's like, people would really love to see your view of the festival because it's going to be very different to everyone else's. And I was like, oh, really? That's the last thing I want to do, have to manage that. Look, I did take some advice, and I worked with an amazing woman that I've worked with over many years, Hayley. If she's listening, she'll know who she is. And she did the good old tone of voice document. We worked out what do I want to look like, what do I want to feel like, what sort of things I want to do, and that was a really great exercise. And I think that's one of your one-on-one learnings and things you always tell everyone to do. And so I did that, but I have to admit I'm fully solo now. I've been
You've grown your wings.
I've grown my wings. I'm doing it myself. Look, my Instagram is not flush with hundreds and hundreds of followers, hundreds of thousands of followers. But what I know is the industry is all following my Instagram, and that's the micro or even nano influencer, maybe even small.
Well, it is
it's
all
really
about
effective.
quality,
It's
isn't
all about
it?
quality,
Yeah.
and I know that the industry, media, magazine editors, key designers, when I put something up, it's reaching them, and that's really powerful. I don't need to have 140,000 followers to do that, because for me, I love that. I think I proposed that we were bumping in, and there's a short video showing the cranes and the lights going in.
I saw it.
And you guys saw it, and I just had so much feedback, and the feedback, the people that were feeding back, wow, super excited, were all the people, my peers in the industry, and people that I think matter to the foundations of the festival. So yeah, it does work.
Well, and I think people want to see that behind the scenes now from brands. They don't just want to see the glossy stuff. They
That's
want
right.
to see the raw and real, what goes on,
Yeah.
what they're not seeing.
Yeah.
And that's what, that's why we want to talk to you today, because we know that people are interested in that.
Yeah.
And that's really cool that you can put that out there.
Yeah, and look, it's another layer of something I have to do, but I do enjoy, like most people with their accounts, getting some positive feedback.
Yeah.
And
We all love a bit of
yeah,
a few
we all
likes.
love
Totally.
Yeah.
Is there anything you share beyond fashion? Do you have any other real passions? We learned about rowing.
Rowing's a good one. Look, I've got a partner of 20 years, and he means everything to me. So I love my home life. I love fitness and Pilates and training, and that's a really great outlet. But I just love being an Australian, and I love having spent so much time overseas and realising what it is to be Australian, and this better connectivity with Indigenous communities, better connectivity with our multicultural history. I think it's a really exciting time. We're not there yet. Again, there's a long way to go, but it does feel like something's brewing. And then you girls are going to love this, but I love animals too. So I had been a vegetarian for a big part of my life. I'm sad to say I'm not currently, and it was mainly a health reason, to be honest. And I know that these days there's much better information to encourage that. So I encourage everyone to stay vegetarian. But I think I'm on the cusp of going back to becoming a fully fledged vegetarian, vegan, something.
Awesome.
And it's about value. So I think this is also a really exciting time to see animal rights and animal welfare really become a part of the normal conversation. I'm really excited about that as well.
Yeah, same. That's cool. We have something in common that we didn't know about.
There you go.
I love that.
So should we cut to quick fires? How are we going for time?
Yeah, I think we should.
Yeah,
I think
perfect.
This has been excellent.
Perfect. Same.
Hope so.
Yeah, I think that was a great note to end off on.
Definitely.
And we always end on some quick fire questions just for a bit of fun.
All right, awesome.
So our first one for you is, what's your most hated fashion trend that's ever been?
I never really loved flares.
Oh,
Offended.
like a dagger to my heart.
I knew you'd say that, but yeah, it's just one of those things. Never really liked it.
Okay.
Do you know what's really funny? We posted on Instagram yesterday,
Yeah.
both in flares.
I was sure you looked amazing. But look, your quick fire answer, I don't know, just
Yeah,
comes
no,
easy.
fair.
It's just been one of those things. I've just never really liked the silhouette that much.
Well, isn't that the thing about fashion? It's
Yeah,
so personal.
totally.
100%.
Me?
You.
What is your favourite show on Netflix?
Oh wow. Actually, probably the most recent 7 days, just purely because I work in obviously events, and the concept of 7 days is 7 days out from an event, and if you haven't seen it, to dog shows to fashion shows, and just showcasing what it takes and what everyone's going through 7 days out from an event. So loving that.
Cool. Okay, we both just
wrote
wrote
it
it down.
down.
Have to watch it. If you could only listen to one song for the rest of your life, what would it be?
Howling by oh god, now I've just had a mental block.
We'll Google it.
Yeah,
Google that.
Oh yeah, I'll just
So
Google it right
nice,
now.
so I can say
Howling
it.
song.
Yeah.
Howling song.
R-Y.
Is this RYX?
RYX. I nearly said RYX. Yeah. So shall I say it again? Do you
Sure,
want
go
me to
for
answer
it. Yeah. If you want to answer again.
It'll be Howling by RYX.
Okay,
Good one.
amazing.
Sorry, I just got out of my notes. What is the best fashion show that you've ever been to?
Alexander McQueen. I can't remember the name of that collection, but it was the full-on antlers runway show in the church in the East End of London. Amazing.
Cool.
That sounds incredible. And the last one, a bit of a funny one for you. Have you ever confused which one of us is which?
Of course, all the time. I know Jess and Stef.
Because you've been really good like this
Yeah.
whole interview of identifying, and I've been super impressed
Ooh.
internally.
Sometimes we'll know people for years, but realise, oh, they don't know which one's which. And it's fair enough because
Yeah.
we're always together.
Yeah, and it's just Jess and Stef and Jess and Stef, and
Yeah.
I have the same thing with people that are always
Yeah.
together. I get confused with
Yeah.
their names all the
I know
time.
I've definitely introduced you guys to people, in a bar or a VIP bar at the festival, and I've had one of those moments, and I'm like, oh, it's Jess and Stef.
Yeah, exactly.
So-
Whenever you have
so-
that moment,
Yeah.
it happens all the time, and we really don't care.
Yeah, it's not funny. And there's a few people that do that. I think in general, it's tough, isn't it, when you're out there in the social world and you've got 1,000 things going on, and I love introducing people, but yeah, remembering everyone's names in the context of those conversations can be super tough.
Oh, it's so hard. The other day in the office here, I was talking to someone for like 15 minutes, and we like work in a bit of a co-working space, and I said her name, but as it came out of my mouth, I was like, oh my god, I'm saying like her co-worker's name, and I realized straight away, and I corrected myself, but I felt so bad about myself.
Well, don't worry, I was often called my sister.
Oh, really?
By my mum.
Oh, that's so funny.
Yeah,
What's your
that's
sister's name?
Sarah.
Oh, so nothing like that.
Sarah. I mean Graeme. Sarah. So anyway, I think we can all do it.
Okay, awesome.
Awesome.
Well, thank you so much.